Today we're replacing the suspension bushings on the eeSilk suspension seat post. As you can see, these are quite worn. I have about 2,000 miles on them and it's starting to get on my nerves having a wiggly seat post. You can see quite a bit of slop in these bushings, so we're going to replace them. The kit costs about $20 and the tool to replace them is also another $20, so this is what you get for 40 bucks. Bushings, O-rings, and the press tool. First step is to remove the seat. If you put the seat bolt back in, it'll prevent the nut from falling out later. There are 4 sets of bushings. The first one I'm going to do is the one that's on the removable pin. I'll also show you how to replace the bushings on the press fit pins, but I'm not going to show you all 3 because the procedure is the same for all 3. I found the press tool is easiest to use with the center elastomer bushing removed. Mine had a bunch of gravel kind of stuck to it, so take it out and clean it off. I'm just using a razor blade here to extract the old bushings, and I'm using a pick to remove the O-ring, and a new one comes with the kit as well. The removable pin is tapered, so one side is a little bit larger diameter than the other, so it's only meant to be installed in one direction. The small button head screw is installed on the drive side of the bike. I didn't notice any wear on my pin. The bushings do seem a little loose, but once it was all installed, everything felt nice and snug. There was no slop, as it seems there would be here. I'm using a screwdriver to install the O-rings and pressing the new bushings in by hand. I'm reassembling the seat post without the elastomer installed. I want to do one pin at a time so I don't mix up any of the parts. And I also found the press tools easier to use with the elastomer removed. And here I'm just tightening this button head screw up finger tight because I'm going to disassemble it later. Next we're going to remove one of the press fit pins using the press tool. This is the orientation I found works best with one of the bolts inside the cage of the seat post. You want to make sure before you tighten this up that the center hole in the press tool is lined with the pin, so that when you extract the pin, it doesn't bind. When you look at the pin, one side has a large head and the other side is a smaller diameter, so the pins only insert from one side. So when pressing the pin out, you want to press from the drive side of the bike. Again, I'm just using a razor blade here to catch the edge of the bushing to pry it out. And then I'm going to use a pick tool to remove the O-ring. When installing the O-ring, it helps to get one edge of the O-ring pressed into the groove and then just kind of wrap the O-ring around. The new bushings should just install by hand. One of them gave me a little bit of trouble, so I used a pair of parallel jaw pliers to press them in straight. Now I'm inserting the pin. Again, it goes in from the non-drive side. It's tapered, it only fits one way. We'll press it in as far as we can by hand and then use the press tool. When using the press tool, you only want to use the center grub screw to press the pin. That will make sure it goes in straight. If you push the pin by tightening the 2 bolts, the press tool is going to be rocking back and forth and it could cause the pin to go in crooked or bind. So we're done with one of the press fit pins. The 2 other press fit pins follow the same procedure, so I'm not going to waste time showing you those. My elastomer was covered in quite a bit of dirt and gravel, so I'm just wiping it down. There's a marking on the elastomer that says front, so you want to make sure that you get it installed the correct way. The elastomer is supposed to be lubricated, so I'm just using a thick silicone grease. It's a O-ring grease. It has the consistency of silicone caulk, but it's a grease, not a glue. The seat post originally came with a tapered guide pin to help you get this last threaded pin installed, but I found it wasn't necessary. I was able just to push the pin in by hand. I've had this screw come out many times, so make sure you put some Loctite on there. Somehow it seems to always want to walk out, and I always catch it just before it's falling out. So definitely put some Loctite on there. The head of this bolt says 2 Newton meters. That doesn't seem like enough to me. I would just snug it up extra tight because I've had this fall out so many times. I can tell by the worn paint on this part that it could be part of my creaking problem, so I just put a little lubrication on there for good measure. With a little bit of fiddle farting around, I managed to get the seat back on. When I took the seat off, I didn't have to loosen that rear seat clamp screw. So putting the seat back on, all I have to do is tighten the front bolt and my seat should be back in exactly the right place. I'm happy to report that replacing all the bushings made the seat post rock solid. There's no wiggle as far as I can tell in the seat post. This was definitely worth the maybe half hour it took to replace and the $20 for the bushings. I'm surprised the bushings wore out so quickly though. I only have about 2,000 miles on this bike. The press tool uses stainless steel bolts that are threaded into an aluminum plate, and I was getting some galling, so make sure you put some lubrication on these threads before they strip out. The first time I used the press, I was no longer able to unscrew the bolt by hand, so I had to clean it up on the wire wheel and add some lubrication. Well, thanks for watching. If you have an eeSilk seat post with a couple thousand miles on it, or even a couple hundred miles, it's worth checking to see if they're loose. It was definitely a worthwhile upgrade for $40 in about 40 minutes, replacing all the bushings. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and thanks again for watching.